I am once again at the Rotonda La Bandera, close to my house, where I start a lot of trips. And today I'm going to take this road where I've been before, but this time more specifically. So there's a mall here. I've walked by this mall so many times, but I've never tried to go in to the Plaza Carolina because I actually don't know if there is a mall or if it's just a plaza. But since I'm out and about, I'm going to go find out. And as I suspected, this mall, Plaza Carolina, is a plaza mall. What we might call a strip mall or a shopping center in the U.S. And actually, like the U.S., there was like a little section of medical offices and then what looks to be some tourist-oriented restaurants. So not my main goal today. So I'm going to continue down this way to Barrio Escalante, which this actually almost already is Barrio Escalante, but not the real Barrio Escalante. Well, this says Altos del Escalante. So this is more or less Barrio Escalante. This is the residential section of it. We will be passing through this section and going to the more commercial and entertainment district part of it pretty soon. So I actually haven't been down this road before, and you can see right there we have a big old tall tower, presumably residential from what I can see. And then right over here on this other side, we have a fence made of barbed wire strung across trees, this big empty lot. So that's something, that I'm kind of familiar with here. Not only here, it also occurs other places, but more here, where you'll have some really big, fancy real estate, and then across from it is something that's just undeveloped, and not all is sure what the reason for that is. Now I've wandered back into the commercial and dining district of Barrio Escalante, which continues for a couple blocks with different bars and restaurants. You can see some of them right here. And because of the climate of Costa Rica, there's obviously a lot of patio dining and then dining like this, where you can just look right out on the street, because it's always 75 Fahrenheit or 25 Celsius in Costa Rica. Sometimes it rains, but it doesn't really get colder or hotter than that. Can't see what this is. You get to make art for a living, so that's some type of art gallery or tattoo parlor. Also very apropos of the neighborhood. Some of these buildings might be residential or Airbnbs or more traditional hotels, bed and breakfast, that type of thing. And over there we have Universidad Central. There's a lot of universities between Santiago Central and then moving eastward. There's also some interesting architecture in this district, and it's hard to know like how much of this architecture is 100 years old. This is a classical building, or if this was built 10 years ago to look classical. I'm not an expert. Let's continue this way. You can see there's a construction crane there, and there's also one over there. So this area, I talked earlier about like how there are empty lots. Well, some of those empty lots are being filled, and I don't know if this road continues, but there is construction, and the economy in Costa Rica, I don't think it's exactly boiling, but there's still a lot of development going on and stuff being built. I've walked by this restaurant several times, the Indian Palace. That is something that I miss coming from the United States, is that there is an Indian restaurant here, but the idea of you can go into a grocery store and buy samosas is just a distant dream here. But more relevant, perhaps, is that Barrio Escalante, along with being dining and entertainment, does have a lot of international flavor, such as it is. So a lot of foreign restaurants here of various types. So right there is Plaza Francia. We've been here before, actually in my second week here. And if you continue in that direction, you can see that building with a dome. This is kind of like where Barrio Escalante starts, and a couple blocks from here is Estación Atlántico and the National Park. So this is kind of the dividing line between, down that central downtown district, and then you go into Barrio Escalante, which really lasts until you get to the Circunnavegación, and then on the other side is the university. To put this all into context as we walk down the street. And apparently the name of this project is the Tower of Being in Escalante. Of course, it's not a gerund in Spanish. And this is really going to put the study of Heidegger forward or maybe backwards by 10 or 20 years, because this is what it is. Sein und Zeit. Not the Zeit right now yet. And I just walked a block south. You can see right there, there's some railroad tracks. This is right after Atlantic Station. So somewhere close to here, these tracks split apart, and then there's the connection that goes to Pavas. But then if you just continue eastward on these tracks, this is the main line that goes to University of Costa Rica and then all the way through to Cartago. And also, as I've said before, those railroad tracks are just kind of there. They actually have more separation here than in some places. There on the other side, La Cantina de Escalante. I'd be curious to know whether that is a wretched scum or wretched hive of scum and villainy. Oh, we're continuing to walk through Escalante. You know, it's more of what we've seen before. There's like little restaurants and dining and stuff. Which direction I'm going? I'm going forward. This sometimes happens to me. I'll be walking along and I'll see something that says something like Sparkles Bakery. And I don't even think about it because, of course, that's just a bakery. Then I realize, oh, that is supposed to be exotic or something like that. There's another restaurant. You can tell a lot of these restaurants are open in both senses. So if you're curious about the prices, remember it's about 500 colones to the dollar. So from 6,000. So starting at about $12. And then there's the appetizers are around $6 or $7. So for a fancy dining district, that's pretty cheap. But it's still expensive enough that like the old legends about like being able to come to Latin America and everything being cheap, those are not true. It still costs $10 or $12 to eat a lunch. We have a ciclovia here. I'm going to continue this way. Also interesting to note, along with being a dining district, there's going to be the normal businesses you see everywhere. There's some lawyers and, of course, dentists, because this is Costa Rica and there's a lot of dentists. So we're kind of exiting, I think, the main dining district, but there's still probably other hints of that around still. So one other thing to notice, it is Boxing Day, and that's actually why I took just a walk instead of going somewhere. I don't know if the buses and trains are on the normal schedule. Now I hear a train blowing, so maybe there is. But I just figured I can save that for tomorrow. But today is December 26th. So one reason that this area might be not super active is, it is the day after Christmas. People are still with their families and not hanging out in cool, resto bars. And there's one other thing to say about that. Incidentally, that is a school of architecture right there, that bright blue building. Form follows function. So we're back in the residential area. There might still be a lot of bread and breakfasts here and stuff like that, but we are in the residential area. One thing also I noticed is, as far as street culture goes, even though there's a lot of dining and entertainment and choices like that, I didn't really notice street culture in the way of artists on the street, musicians, festivals, and maybe I just came at the wrong time. It is December 26th. But in general, there is less street culture here than in, for example, Santiago, a lot less, and even less than in the United States, which, street culture is not really a thing there in the same way. And just as far as even though this is kind of the alternative or hip district, a lot of things that I would associate with that in the U.S., like record stores, bookstores, don't seem to be there. So to me, it doesn't have quite the same energy of artistic creativity, but maybe that's just because it doesn't fit my expectations. There's also a chance that those types of activities are in different parts of the city. The university does feel more creative. With the United States, a lot of times I associate things like that, the dining district, with entertainment, art, and also just energy. And maybe this was just I was spoiled and misremembering the past, what it was like to be 15 years old and walking down Hawthorne Boulevard and buying records for $1, that type of thing. But it does kind of feel different here. Maybe I just don't know. I don't know what else to say about that. It gets kind of complicated. It's just my lone observations. So it looks like I'm back walking out of that area, back towards the rotunda. So, this was just a brief introduction. If you are going to visit Costa Rica as a tourist and you come to San Jose, there's a very good chance you will either be staying and visiting in this Barrio Escalante area. And I would recommend it. I actually haven't been to a restaurant there. In fact, I haven't been to a restaurant at all in Costa Rica. But you will probably visit there, dine there, drink there, have fun. So I just wanted to show that. And of course, that was just a brief, walk around the neighborhood, but hopefully it does show a little bit of what it was like. So as a final point, and I know I'm repeating this, I've just left Barrio Escalante, and that is the shopping mall right there. You can see we have another big undeveloped lot here right between some very valuable commercial properties. And of course, I'm not saying that necessarily this should be developed, but I would think something like this that is next to a creek, it's next to the Quebrada Negrito, would naturally be very good for a recreational area. Either that or develop it, but as it is, it's just kind of a scrappy, empty lot. And it'd be really interesting to know the history of how land use turned out the way it is here, whether that's economic or cultural or geological. Anyway, just one more thing, and like I said, I hope this was a good introduction to a place you'll probably see if you come to San Jose.